Hey guys, Dozer here bringing you a new video. Today, going to be talking about my experience in my first Pro Quest just over the past weekend, as well as an update on some of the Prism brews that I've got cooking up, so be sure to stick around for that. For right now, let's talk about the Pro Quest. So I've been out of town for the past week, didn't really get a lot of chance to test my new builds, and I decided to bring a version of Prism to Pro Quest that I had come up with before I left, which was heavily based on running auras. I ended up getting second place at the Pro Quest, only losing to the Viserai player who ended up winning in the finals against me, Matt W, congrats to him. And beyond that, the deck performed very well, although it was definitely helped by the spread of the meta. So let's get started on the deck list. I'll talk about some of the deck choices that came up in the tournament, and I will go over the matchups after that. So let's get started. First thing to note is that Crown of Reflection is not present in the list. Crown of Reflection is not worth running at this current time, in my opinion. Even when you're trying to run tons of auras, a once per game ability to give up something you already control to put something from your hand into play is just really not worth it. You give up your ability to have the Arcane Barrier, and it's just very lackluster for Prism specifically. Maybe an Illusionist comes out in the future who wants to run this, but it's just such a low impact and, again, once per game ability that you have to be able to pull off some crazy strong combos. The only thing is that you really can't get value off of this because you can't do it during your opponent's turn. If you could, it'd be auto run, it'd be amazing, but you can't. You can only use it on your turn as an instant, so it's effectively a time snap potion that kills one of your auras. That's about it. So I'm not running this card. However, we'll get into what I did run. So obviously, we're on Prism. We ran the light heavy package. We ran Luminaris, Halo, and Vestige. So this is the core that Prism's always really been big on. Vestige of Soul allows you to pay for your expensive cards a lot easier by getting extra resources off of your light cards when cards have gone into your soul. Halo of Illumination helps you achieve that by putting cards into your soul manually, which Prism normally struggles to do because normally Prism can only put cards into her soul if her attacks hit. Bolton can do it pretty much consequence-free with charge, but Prism has to hit, and since Prism has phantasms and can often get stopped in her tracks when she tries to be aggressive, you really have to rely on Halo and your more defensive soul-filling options like Soul Shield and Merciful Retribution in order to turn on your Vestige to make your big plays happen. So that's a pretty standard lineup there. The head equipment and the weapon. Notably, I did not run Arcanite Skullcap. I currently am on the fence about it. I feel like it's a strong option, but considering the fact that it only lets you block 2 to 3 damage a game is not necessarily good enough for Prism. Prism has other things that she's trying to do, and being able to guarantee your ability to make a Tome of Divinity play into some other stuff to get tempo makes Halo of Illumination still a great pick. Beyond that, for the hand slot, we ran 3 options for that. Notably, we ran the defensive gloves, we ran Iron Hide Gauntlet, Nullrune Gloves, and Goliath Gauntlet. I've not really used Iron Hide Gauntlet before. It's not something that I've really prioritized before, but in the current metagame of Bravo Star of the Show, as well as a whole bunch of other decks that are attacking your resources in multiple ways, having the ability to block 2 damage with your floating resources, effectively making up for that Skullcap block, but giving you an outlet for your pitch, is really, really useful when you're trying to cover up these big blocks. Especially when you're trying to use a Soul Shield and block for 8, you can pitch 1 blue card, block with Soul Shield and Ironhide Gauntlet to block 8 damage total. That's very strong, and you waste a lot of resources as Prism, so you don't need to have those free costed battle worn type of armor blocks in order to get that value. And Ironhide is unconditional when it can block 2, so you can block for 2 when you're ahead as well as for when you're behind, which Arcanite Skullcap cannot do. Nullrune Gloves is key for getting you Nullrune, which is Arcane Barrier, to be able to protect yourself against magic damage, such as against Viserai and the other Rune Blades. Goliath Gauntlet is in here, though I'm not sure I would keep it in. I mainly left it in there for the matchups like Katsu and Lexi and such, where you can really pressure them with eruditions. But the thing is that every time that I was running into those matchups, I felt like I wanted the Ironhide Gauntlets to be able to block their key attacks, and I didn't really miss not having Goliath Gauntlet, so I would probably trim Goliath Gauntlet going forward. But beyond that, we ran 2 pieces of equipment in the leg slot. Phantasmal Footsteps, the core illusionist card that allows you to get your action point back after your phantasms have been broken, as well as blocking for 1 as long as you pay a resource. And the spicy tech, the Mage Master Boots. So I ran Mage Master Boots in this list, and you'll see why. It actually was the most overperforming card of the day. It was really instrumental in getting me some key wins and being a big upgrade over Footsteps in matchups where I wasn't worried about them breaking my phantasms, or in matchups where if they broke my phantasms, I wasn't going to be able to do anything anyway. So there was no reason to run the Footsteps in those matchups. So let's get right into the main deck now. So the first thing you have to know about the new deck list is that this is a untested, very rough proof of concept list. It is not thoroughly tested like my other lists have been. It is not very consistent from what I've found, but it is good at doing what Prism likes to do, which is to snowball out of control. So let's see here. Got a lot of Spectral Shield tokens we got to separate out of there. Cool. So the first thing I want to talk about is the auras. So we've got Merciful Retribution, 3 of, Parable of Humility, 3 of, Arclight Sentinel, 3 of, Shimmers of Silver, 3 of. I'm just going to start, getting them out of here. And I'll start talking about kind of why I started there. So Prism has a lot of strong points to her based on her ability to swarm the board with permanent cards that give value over time that your opponent has to dedicate a lot of resources, ideally, to removing. This can help Prism stabilize the game and slow down the game so that she can get value over time, which is where she shines. So having the ability to have a lot of Spectres on the board is just a really great thing for Prism to be able to do. And with the new auras released in Everfest, those being all of the blue non-instant auras that don't have Go Again, notably, we're able to create a situation where you can try to put down 2 Spectras per turn and try and win off of that advantage. That's kind of the way the deck list started kind of in my mind. Like, okay, well, if phantasms are getting broken left and right by the Bravos and the Viserais and the whatever, then how am I going to even put up a fight? Well, if I can put down enough Spectras, I should be able to snowball the game and try and win. So I ran 3 Pierce Reality, 3 Haze Bending, 3 Passing Mirage, 3 Shimmers of Silver, and then 3 Genesis, 3 Ode to Wrath. They are in here somewhere. Yeah. But yeah, it's just all of the auras, basically, that you could possibly run, because what it turned out to be the case was, at least in my very limited initial testing, was that if I was able to get multiple Spectres out every turn, my opponent's never able to remove them, and then they give up trying, right? Because eventually you're going to outpace them, you're going to be pinging them down, and they have to start attacking your face, which is a pretty decent place to be in, right? So we've got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yellow Spectras, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 blue Spectras multiplied by 3, puts us up to 27, I believe is the correct number there. So with 27 auras, I thought that would be perfect to fit in 3 copies of Prismatic Shield Red to round us up to a solid 30 card main board. All of these auras, obviously the Spectras, and then the ability to create Spectral Shields was really great for us, and the biggest thing was being able to play 2 of them per turn. Because these are blues and because they don't have Go Again, you can't make use of the full blue hands very well. So having every single copy of the instant auras allows you to spam these out, even if you have an awkward hand, and even if you don't have Go Again. Instants don't require action points at all. So normally what you could do is play a yellow aura, maybe even pitching a yellow if you need to. You could ping with the first aura, and then you could drop a blue aura at the end of your turn. That's a 4-card hand, and you're able to have now 2 Spectres out. And that's very hard for some decks to remove. If you're able to do that fast enough, you're able to snowball the game pretty hard. That was the first thing. So I was thinking, okay, well, how do I support this strategy, right? Like, what is the payoff for running all of these Spectres? Well, before, normally what we would do is we'd run a ton of blue Heralds and run Tome of Divinities alongside our stuff in order to pay for all of our cards easier. And that's exactly what I did here. I took the best cards that Prism has access to, specifically the best Heralds, ran them all in blue when possible, and then I filled in the gaps with yellow Heralds that were very good, and then was able to, from there, have a pretty full deck. So let's take a look at what that looks like here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then War Tune, so 5 sets of blue Heralds. And then for the yellow Heralds, as I normally like to run, it's normally going to be restricted to yellow War Tune and Erudition. Those are normally the only Heralds I really worry about running. And everything else is pretty lackluster in my opinion. Now, that said, this list ended up being very blue heavy. If I could have done it again, I would probably have run fewer blues by a tad. I would have trimmed some of them so that I could fit a couple more yellows to be able to put on some offensive pressure more often, because not having access to the yellows just meant that I couldn't pressure with the go again on a lot of turns, and so had to play more defensively, which wasn't what I was trying to do. Beyond that, that puts us up to 15, 21 Heralds, and then we would run the 3 Tome of Divinity, 24 cards, 27 cards with Soul Shields, and then what do we do from there? Well, normally we would run 3 copies of Miraging Metamorph, because it is currently the best card that Prism has gotten out of Everfest, being a 1-cost 7-attack Phantasm attack that says if it's destroyed, it lets you copy an aura that you control. So effectively, this was the deck list, the main board. I would run this into most matchups pretty much unaltered. The only sideboarding I really brought in was the following. I had 3 copies of Celestial Cataclysm, I had 3 copies of Yellow Unmovable, I had 3 Time Snap Potions, and 3 copies of Tome of Fyendal. That's a lot of information, so let's kind of break down what we just talked about. So the core idea was have all of the blue auras that Prism now got out of Everfest and use them in order to snowball alongside the expensive yellow auras, which cost 4, and to be able to swarm the board fast enough to attack our opponent down for game, while slowing down the game by being able to block when possible. The thing is, this doesn't block well, right? Your instants all block 0, and you're running a ton of instants. You're running a ton of 2 blocks with the 0 cost auras, and your heralds, while they cost, nothing to block with, and they block 3, 3's not good enough to block all this crazy damage output that's coming at us from Bravo Star of the Show or whatever. So having a couple big defense reacts like Soul Shield and Immovables was really important to be able to turn some of the cards in our hand into a bit better of block, so we're able to survive long enough to put down our cards. That said, again, if I was really making a change just off the top of my head, I would say that I would probably have cut Blue Triumph, Blue Ravages, and replaced those with Yellow Protection and Yellow Rebirths. I think that would have made my ratios a bit better, but not too crazy, because Tome of Divinity, what I'm finding is when you're not running Energy Potion, which is notably absent here, you're not running the Energy Potion, it makes Halo a lot worse, but it makes what you draw a lot less important as well. With Halo, you really wanted to draw a light card that was a yellow or a blue, and it really gave you a bit of flexibility, which was great, but it wasn't really necessary when you have so many blues in the deck, to where I felt like I could cut the Energy Potions and cut some of the blues and still hit the same amount of power every turn by having the blues that I do have. That's at least what I'm feeling off the top of my head. I could be wrong. I could, need to keep the ratios as they are. Who knows? I haven't tested enough, but that's my gut reaction. The reason I ran Mage Master boots might become apparent to you now, but I'll explain it for those who don't quite see it yet. So Mage Master Boots allows you to pay a resource and give the next non-attack action you play this turn go again. That works on all of your blue auras, such as your Haze Bendings, your Pierce Realities, your Shimmers of Silver. And that also works on Tome of Fyendal, as well as your Time Snap Potion. So the core idea here was Prism can't block well with this list. You just can't. You have a ton of cards you have to run in the Spectras and the Heralds, and you don't really have a lot of room for defense reactions, and if you have the defense reactions, they're not necessarily helping you either. So I figured, well, if I'm going to be running these heavy blue lists, how often am I actually attacking with a Phantasm? Right? Normally, you're trying to attack with some big Phantasms here and there to try and push tempo, but really, in this list, my Heralds are here only for block and pitch. They're really not here to attack with. And Mirage Metamorph, I kind of want them to pop that card. In Erudition, there are times where you just don't ever get to play it, and that's just how the game goes. But when you do get to play it and you have some attack buffs, like on your Pierce Realities and giving it the removal of Phantasm with Passing Mirage, all of a sudden, you don't really need Footsteps. In a lot of matchups, you just don't need them. With 3 copies of Parable and 3 copies of Passing Mirage, as well as not really relying on our Phantasm cards to attack at all, I felt like Footsteps was kind of a liability in a lot of matchups. And so the Mage Master Boots would let you survive on a turn where, let's say you had a Yellow Herald, 2 blue auras, and some random card. Maybe it's a Soul Shield or something, or maybe it's just another blue, like a Blue Herald. Blue Herald, yellow card, Pierce Reality, Haze Bending. Well, you can now break your Mage Masters on an otherwise awful turn where you're going to attack the Blue Herald with Go Again, maybe. Or if it was an all-blue hand, then you were going to attack for like a little bit of damage and end your turn. Then you're able to use the Mage Masters to get a card into your pitch. Maybe it's a yellow, maybe it's not. And you're going to be able to play an aura, attack with it, maybe. Or you'll be able to play another aura. Pretty much guaranteed, and that's really strong. Alternatively, in a matchup where you're not going to be able to block very well anyway, you could run your Tome of Fyendals as well as your Time Snap Potions to be able to have a better chance at taking the damage that you wouldn't be able to block well anyway, healing back some of the damage, and then dumping your hand to be able to do a lot on that turn. Time Snap helps you do Tome of Fyendal, but Mage Master Boots effectively does the same thing because you're not really able to get the maximum benefit of the Tome of Fyendal, Fyendal Spring Tunic, Time Snap combo to get like a 6-card heal and a 6-card hand, because you pitched that to play the Tome of Fyendal in the first place, thanks to the fact that we have Vestige. So Mage Master Boots doesn't lose you any health, you still heal 5, and you still get to play this with like no setup, which is really, really good. Yeah, it came up really big in the Starvo matchup and in the Viserai matchup. Unfortunately, you don't really have the ability to easily deal with those decks. They have a lot of damage that goes over the top, and they are very good at controlling the pace of the game and threatening a ton of damage or threatening a ton of disruption. Bravo, star of the show, threatening a lot of disruption, and Viserai threatening just a ton of damage if you don't stop him coming in, right? If Viserai hits you with Mavrian Skies onto an attack, like let's say a meet and greet, well, he's going to make, on average, 3 rune chants from that. That's 3 extra damage. Versus if you just block that card with Footsteps or whatever you're using, you're going to be stopping a lot of damage that they would have gotten for free. So, I'm still not sold on whether or not Mage Masters or Footsteps are the best in that matchup. But Mage Masters being able to do Tome of Fyendal is really, really good for being able to try and get some tempo back, because you can't threaten Viserai's hand. You just can't. He's got armor to stop Erudition. It's no problem. He's got the ability to set up rune chains that you can't interact with. And he's able to come in over the top for tons of damage with Sonata fixing his hands. The Runic Reclamation, destroying your auras while you're not able to block it, is really devastating. And generally speaking, I think that it's a pretty bad matchup now, ever since they printed all these anti-Prism cards. But generally speaking, that's the deck list. I will post a link in the description that you'll be able to follow to see it. But yeah, the tournament went well. As far as my matchups, I got very lucky. As far as the meta of the day, I think a lot of people thought that Lexi was going to be a good pick to be able to disrupt both Bravo Star of the Show as well as Viserai. And so we saw a lot of Lexi at my tournament. There was also a lot of Bravo Star of the Show, Viserai, and actually normal Bravo Showstopper. So What was interesting about that was, for me, there was really only one or two other Prisms. There was a Katsu player, and I think that was about it. I don't think there were any Briar, I don't think there were any Dash, and a lot of these other characters that you might see come up in a tournament near you did not show up in my tournament. It was very heavy Ranger, Guardian, and Runeblade being Viserai, and it just wasn't a bad day for Prism. I mean, it was a really good day for me, honestly. I got placed against a Bravo Showstopper on round 1. With an aura list like this, that's basically a free win, so we were able to crush that Bravo player. Then we moved on to the second round. I played against a Ice Lexi. Again, Lexi, very hard to win against Prism when she's on ice because of the low damage output and lack of threatening on hits. Basically, because Prism has all these instants, she can dump her hand and play around the Frostbite stuff very easily, as well as getting free damage off of Merciful Retribution because it triggers off of Frostbites. Gives Prism the ability to win that matchup pretty easily, and so I was able to win the Lexi matchup as well. Then I went into my third round, which was also against Ice Lexi, and I felt like I was just really getting lucky that day as kind of a payback for facing 5 Briars at Nationals, and that was another pretty convincing win. Then I went on to play in round 4, which was against another Bravo Showstopper. So again, overwhelmed him pretty quickly. He didn't really draw any answers to anything that I was doing, and we just ended the game really quickly because I just overwhelmed him. So nothing to really talk about there. Then in the 5th round, I played against Viserai. Viserai was very, very difficult. That was the guy who ended up winning the whole tournament. And I was running Footsteps at first. I was not running the Tome of Findalls, and I was trying to make it work with that, and ended up losing pretty convincingly. I didn't really have the ability to stop enough damage, and I couldn't really poke back for enough over the course of the game to where he's just able to overwhelm me and end the game. Then I played against Bravo, star of the show, the Elemental Bravo, and I was able to barely squeak out a win. It was very difficult. You know, when you're seeing a dominated +2 crippling crush with Go Again, you're just thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Nothing really counters that. And on top of that, I had a very low blocking list. So I ran Mage Master Boots, I had my Tome of Fyendal, I had my Time Snap Potions, I had my Tome of Divinities, and because I was able to eke out enough advantage over the course of the game, get my Tome of Divinities off to be able to draw into some gas in the late game and get enough healing off to stabilize, I was able to win that game. It was very tough though, and if the draws had gone a little bit different, it would have possibly gone different. The other thing I want to note about that matchup was that the Bravo player was able to get his Bravo ability off like 6 to 7 turns in a row from the very beginning of the game, so it was very difficult to be able to stand up to that, and since you can't really block it efficiently, you kind of just have to give up on trying and just try and do what you can in the meantime. And I think healing comes a lot into play there, because if you are able to heal through some of that damage, the Bravo will run out of stuff eventually, and you'll just be able to win once he runs out of reds to be able to threaten you with, or once the fuses stop happening as frequently. Beyond that, I then went into top 8, I believe, after that. So in top 8, I first faced another Viserai. This guy was playing a slightly different list, and I was able to beat him very, very narrowly. The star of the show today for us as the Prism was the Merciful Retributions. These were easily the best things that were available. I mean, every single game that I won was off of the back of Merciful Retributions arcane damage and, you know, stalling the game out with prismatics. I mean, it was literally the only reason I could beat the Viserai there, because he had me in a position where I was at like 3 life, he was at 1 life, and once he got down to that 1 life, I was able to have a Spectral Shield up, have some auras out, Merciful Retribution, and another couple of the blue Spectras, and even though I had no cards left in Soul, even though I was really close to dying, he couldn't just throw his attacks at me because he had Rune Chance, he had Arcane coming in, so the Rune Chance would pop, breaking my shield, and if he didn't have enough resources to pay for Arcane Barrier off of his Skull Cap, he would just die to the Merciful on the spot. So the match came down to managing that Merciful Retribution damage, and I was able to eventually come out with the win, just barely. And then that was really off the back of the Mage Master boots. Very early on in the game, I was able to get double aura out, and then I was able to halo into double tome, and really just snowball the early game to get to a point where I could get him down low enough to try and win. If I didn't get that to happen, it would have been really, really difficult to come back. So I think you do have to take the initiative as the Prism in that matchup. You have to get your auras out there, try and snowball the game, and then you might be able to win fast enough before the Viserai kind of just runs you over with a million arcane damage from things like Revel in Runeblood and Rosetta. Beyond that, I then faced off against another Ice Lexi. Ice Lexi seemed to be doing very well that day. I was having a very good win-loss record and facing a lot of the Ice Lexis, so I imagine their builds were doing well to slow down all the different Starvos and slow down all the different other decks. And but unfortunately for him, I had Erudition turn 1. He was running Null Rune Boots instead of the Perch Grapplers. He couldn't give up New Horizon on literally turn 0. So he let the Erudition hit. I had another Erudition hit. At that point, he's committed. I put another Erudition down. And, I was able to get off to a very big lead off of that. And then eventually win the game. Although it did give me a lot of trouble towards the end of the game. I think that if the game had gone a bit differently, if I hadn't got off to that rousing start, I might have lost that game. It would have been very interesting to see. I was running Mage Masters and Iron Hides. And I think that the Mage Masters were hit or miss. Obviously, they were there as a safety net in case I had an all-blue hand and didn't really have much to do. But at the same time, the power of the Ironhide was very good, and the power of the block from the Footsteps can also be very good. So it's hard to say exactly what the correct move was there, but it ended up working out for me. And then after that, we were in the finals. So it was me versus the Viserai again, and the one who had beaten me in Swiss. And he was able to go first. He chose to go first as the person higher up in the ranking there. Although I had gone first in our first match and still lost, so take that for what you will. And he was able to get a very early lead, as well as there was a turn where he was starting to do his Mordred Tide and things like that. And I went in response and played Arclight Sentinel because I wanted to try and reduce the amount of rune chance he was going to make. He then proceeded to become the Arc Knight into 2 copies of Runic Incantation, or whatever it is, Rune Blood Incantation, whatever the card's called, and create a ton of rune chance off of that. And for the rest of the game, I was just on the back foot because he was generating free rune chance every turn, coming out with Runic Reclamation to kill my auras while also throwing my hand. I can't block it. It's 7 attack. My stuff costs or blocks for 0 or 2. It wasn't really happening there. And I was just grinded down. However, that matchup was a lot closer, thanks to the Mage Master boots being able to give me the ability to get my Tome of Findalls off to heal and be able to try and prolong the game to chip him down once he started having some weaker turns. So all in all, very good event. Very happy getting second place. It was a really fun tournament. I got a lot of fun out of meeting everybody. It was a ton of fun seeing everybody out there. Hate everybody that I played against. And I hope that I'll get to see anybody else in the tournaments upcoming. And I'm hoping to meet you all out there. It was a ton of fun, man. It was 9 hours of flesh and blood after a business trip. It was good to be back, to see everybody in the community, and to just play some good flesh and blood. So I'm hoping that in the next couple weeks, I'll be able to fine-tune my Prism lists, which you need to be on the lookout for in the upcoming videos, because I'll be going into each of the deck lists that I built leading up to ProQuest, and then we'll go from there and show you guys what I've been cooking up. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, man, this was a good event. I'm looking forward to more Flesh and Blood. And one last thing before I go, I will be posting these deck techs about my deck list that I built before ProQuest, but they will be snapshots of things that I worked on 2 weeks ago. They are going to be pretty indicative of where I'm looking for as far as deck building in the current metagame. But if you want to stay up to date on all the most up-to-date lists and all the up-to-date theory crafting and testing, then I would like you to consider joining me on Patreon to get access to that information. For the $5 tier and up, you get access to all of the patron Discord, you get access to all of the patron exclusive videos, as well as all of the deck lists and theory crafting that I've been putting in over time to try and get us ready for ProQuest season. So be sure to not miss out, and I will see you there. Otherwise, thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next videos. Take care. Thank you for watching. This video and the videos on this channel are made possible thanks to viewers like you. I'd like to give a special shout out to all the patrons who help support the channel and make all this content possible. Starting with the Dreamweaver patrons, we have Tara Blitz. Thank you for your continued support. You rock. For the Sentinel Tiers patrons, we have Bon, David Romish, Exploding Potatoes, Joe Gianoli, Michael Lynch, P13TR2U, Tim J, and Todd Stewart. Thank you guys for your support. It's a pleasure working with you. Then we have a lot of new heralds to welcome into the fold. Thank you all for your support, and I can't wait to see where all the Everfest and Flesh and Blood stuff takes us. So starting with thank you to Andy Lee, Callum Bousfield, Carlos Carrero, Christopher D. Bates, Dueling Spuds, Ike Vic Hagen, Francesco Lorenzi, Henrik, Jay Kitsos, Jake Arms, Jake Bennett Dwyer, Joel Wilhelm, John N. Downing Jr., Jonathan Pohl, Michael Stowell, Moonshaker, Muskrat Tuck, Raymond Scott, Richard N., T.Y. Craig, Valentine N., Will Fry, and Zombie Z. Thank you all for your support, and let's not forget the Spectral Shields, Andrew Good, Bryce Morgan, Drew Wagers, Rachel, and Sarazar. Thanks to all of the patrons for your support. Each and every one of you makes this all possible, and I couldn't do it without you. Thanks, everybody, and take care.